Well, here's tonight's project, and possibly, depending on how it goes, tomorrow's project as well. It's my sister-in-law's E60 530i. This is a 2004, so it's got the M54 in it, thank goodness. It's also a 6-speed manual. Wonder if I had anything to do with her finding this car. Anyway, this is a fantastic machine. However, it needs some 100,000 mile maintenance. So we're going to be doing serpentine belt, tensioner, both idlers, water pump thermostat, CCV, trans, diff oil, and intake boot. I don't think I'm forgetting anything else there. It's not due for an oil change. Oh, also, yeah, that alternator over there. Preventative, but it's smart. These tend to last between 115 and 160,000 miles. This car is at 105 or something right now, so it's not gonna fail right now, but man, when an alternator leaves you stranded, that's just no good. So gonna be doing all that, especially it's in the same area of the car, so why not? I can't remember. I'll have to look through my spreadsheet to see if we're doing an oil filter housing gasket on this car too or not. I might have already done it. So I'll have to take a peek. So in this car, the M54 powered E60s, the first step on all this maintenance is taking out the airbox. On most M54 cars, there's just hardware here and here you have to take out, but on this car there's also one here. So you have to unclip the 3 clips on the airbox, take the MAF plug out just by kind of pushing up on this plug and then pushing out with the actual electrical connector, and that 6mm or flat blade right there just to loosen that intake boot, lift the airbox top out, and then you can undo those. I don't know if those are T30s or T40s, not really sure, but there's 3 torques. Then the bottom of the airbox can also come out. After that, I'm going to take off the DISA valve, which is brand new, but it has to come out just to gain a little bit more room, because I'm going to be doing the intake boot, and I'll probably have the throttle body out as well to do the CCV, which is the warm weather variety on this car still, which is no good for Minnesota. Beyond that, I'm not sure if I'm going to deal with pulling the radiator fan when I do the water pump. I'm probably going to try to avoid that if I can. So it's looking like I may not have room to avoid it. So a whole bunch of Torx T30s around here. Yikes. We'll see. Thermostat looks easy enough. Upper radiator hose looks easy enough. I got new ones of all that, so there's really no reason not to do it. Again, like I said, doing a new alternator, doing the 2 idlers. I guess there's 1 idler and 1 tensioner wheel on this. It's just laid out a little differently on the 5 Series because of this upper hose. And yeah, I guess we'll go from there. I'm probably also going to take off this plate and check the plugs. Previous independent mechanic did them, but one of the coils already went bad, and I have to make sure that they are the correct variety of plug that's in there as well. So lots to do. I'm going to turn on some music in here, and unfortunately that means I cannot do YouTube recording, so just kind of giving you a heads up of what I'm going to do, and then I'll come back once this stuff is actually kind of out of the way. If you have questions about how to remove something that you see removed in the next segment, just shoot me a message. I'm happy to try to help. I've got to do a good point where I can kind of show you a little bit of what I've done. So the airbox is out. DISA valve is out, sitting on top. Idler control valve, which normally sits inside that little gray bushing back there, is out. Throttle body's out, which normally sits right there. And here's our CCV, warm weather version. So you can see one of the hoses on the upper left corner of the screen there. That one goes up underneath this panel here to an air distribution pipe, which I'm going to have to pull all this off and get to that. I've had it off recently, so it shouldn't be too bad. I already took one hose out, which is that one. And that connects right down there. My preferred tool of choice is the hook pick. Generally, if you can get this thing around here, and around here. You can pull it off without breaking it. I highly recommend you just replace everything anyway, because it's never going to be, I don't know, it's not smart to reuse any of it. You're doing it for a reason. So again, I'm going to pull this cover and I'll show you guys what's under there. So that's where that pipe comes up. There's my clip. And this actually has a recently replaced cold weather BMW hose on it, so I'm not going to mess with that. I think that can stay put as is, and I'll replace the rest of the hot weather components because those will freeze up and cause problems. All right, the new cold weather CCV is in. There we go. Sorry it's upside down for you right here, but you get the idea. So I've taken out the upper radiator hose, took off both the accessory belts. Again, I didn't really cover this because I cover it so much on the other E46 videos and everything else M54 I work on, but your main tensioner is right here, your idler on an E60 is down here. It's either going to be a T50 or an 8mm hex. This one was 8mm hex on both. You're going to have a pair of 16mm fasteners on your alternator. If your car is a 99, or well, let's say 2002 and newer, you're going to have a rectangle plug, which is easier to pull off. It's going to look just like that. Push down on the tab, pull out. If you got a 2003 and up, you're going to have one of these oblong oval, I think they call them oval connectors. That's just got a tab, you press down on the top and pull out. Then there's always going to be a 17 if it's plastic or a 13 if it's metal nut. Once those are out, pop the alternator straight out. Water pump, you got 4 10 mils on it. The plastic pulleys tend to bind up pretty well on the engine, so you may have to carefully use a rubber mallet or a hammer to pry or something. I mean, a screwdriver to pry. And then I'll go over again how to pull that out. To take the thermostat out, you've got a single 2-pin electrical connector up at the top here. Just pull that off, set it to the side. On the top here, you got a 10 mil, you got a 13, you got 2 more 10s just underneath. And then this plate, you also have to take an 11 off to get this plate enough wiggle room, because that's also under your 13. Here, I'll pop down and show you the 10s. There's one, there's the other. So thermostat, water pump, pulley, those are easy. Behind the water pump pulley, there's going to be 4 more 10mm bolts, which you'll also have to pull off. And the water pump is in with a giant O-ring. So you don't have to worry about leakage until you've actually gone way past the point of taking the bolts out of the water pump on these things. I'm going to do that and come back once again. So I have all the bolts out of the thermostat and have all the nuts out of the water pump. There's actually a really cool built-in design feature on the water pump. If you're doing a thermostat at the same time, you already have a spare bolt that's the perfect size. But what it does is it threads in to a hole right there, and if you thread it all the way in, it'll actually pull the water pump out of the engine for you, so you don't have to do it and break up your hands. So that's pretty neato, if I do say so myself. Also, the thermostat, you're gonna have to wiggle it a little bit. I don't know. Shouldn't take too much to get it off of there. Boom, out. On the mating surface there, a paper towel is probably plenty. If you've got a mild wire brush, I would maybe take it to that as well. They're very, very good about sealing on these engines. They're a little worse on the pre-99 non-double Vanos engines, but overall, pretty good. So I'm going to wind that in, pull the water pump out of this bad boy, try to catch at least some of the coolant, and then at least get that completely out so I'm halfway done with the entire car job. Well, back at the E60, I do have to take this panel off because the water pump won't quite come out because of the electric fan. So looks like a whole smattering of T30s, and then these look like T45s, maybe T50s. So start with these and then do the perimeter. Pull that panel off, and then we'll see how the Oh, you might have to unbolt the latches too, I'm not sure. If you can set it up out of the side, great. Then we'll figure out how the electric fan is attached on the back side. Well, below that, there's that stupid piece of plastic which has 5 Torx T25s in it. And then you can undo this little electrical connector here, which lets you move the fan enough to get a water pump in there. So I recommend not removing it all the way, just get it enough to get your water pump out and get your new one in. Alright, so I've got the new, I think this is an FMI pump. I'm going to debag it, cut that little zip tie off, and then slide it in. On the water pumps, this little burr faces down. Well, there we have the shiny new thermostat, the upper nut, and the new water pump installed. Make sure to take this off if you have a mechanical fan clutch. The E60 doesn't, so I'm leaving it on. Next up is going to be the water pump pulley. Let's see here, after that, probably going to finish up the CCV. The last thing to do there is to install the new dipstick tube. But before that, I'll probably pop in the throttle body and idle air motor. And then the last thing up here will be the DISA valve. Then after that, the alternator. After that, the new upper radiator hose. And then just sort of going back in the same order we originally took everything out with, starting with kind of the airbox lower, airbox upper, and then I'm going to fire it up and make sure it still runs. And of course fill it up with coolant. And looks like this tank does not have a bleeder on it, so okay, that's pretty atypical. So I'll have to probably do a little bit of running with this thing just to make sure the heater inside is working after we top it up with coolant. Usually there's a bleed screw which lets us evacuate the air out of the system while we add coolant. I'm not seeing it on this car though. The last step for me was getting the air conditioning belt back on. That's now back on. I filled it with coolant. We're all good there. Started it up just to make sure it would still run. It does. Now moving on to transmission and differential fluids. So that's going to be a whole bunch of fun. Right now I'm just draining out the transmission. You can see the fill plug up there kinda. Drain plug's right there. Back in the rear end, I got the drain plug right there, the fill plug right there. The rear ends on these, 75/90 is okay, 90W140 is my preference. In the transmission, ATF is what it calls for. Usually Pentos and ATF1 is what they put in there. I'm going to be doing a 50/50 of Redline MT90 and Pentos and ATF1 in this transmission. It usually leads to a little bit better protection and a little bit better shift characteristics.